Good evening. It's Dr. B. It's about 7:30 on a Sunday night, later than I usually get on, but I decided to get a little bit of a video in tonight, and then I will augment that with a more comprehensive one tomorrow, as well as have office hours tomorrow night, again from 6 to 7, and that's optional. And if anyone can get on, you feel free to do that. If no one's there by about 6:30. I leave my Zoom on and I kind of walk away. And it will be recorded nonetheless, unless I think it's a totally personal one conversation between myself and a student who may get on. So if that's the case, then I wouldn't be doing that. Otherwise, you'll have a recording to work. You'll have that recorded anyway. So in either event, you have access to whatever it is that I'll be doing tomorrow night. But tomorrow morning, I will be pulling together a presentation about Chapter 9. And Chapter 9 is, in certain senses, I think, anticlimactic in a lot of ways, but nonetheless has important issues to consider as we move through this. And the more I look at Chapter 8, as I've said, I think last week, there's just a lot of material in that one for you to consider and to really work into what it is that you want to make out of yourself in terms of a 21st century human resources manager. And then, quite frankly, after having read and reacted to your discussion questions from this past week, a lot of you were very eloquent about how certain things that you wanted to know more about or wondered about. Some of you were positive about some of the developments of technology, and others of you were all for it, but recognized that there were pitfalls for it. So what I've done is actually have crafted a discussion question that's grounded in that chapter, but it's also grounded in the matter of what I believe I've said to you several times, the matter of what I call futuring. So we're kind of going to try to combine two pieces at the same time to make that happen. And so I'm going to do some of that just to clarify some of that tonight, and do some housekeeping with you, and then move you to our full-fledged Chapter 9 exploration tomorrow morning. And I'll post that up as soon as it's done. So with that having been said, as far as housekeeping is concerned, yes, I have read all your midterms. No, I have not put the grades into the grid on the evaluation sheet. Yes, I will do that tomorrow. Yes, it's worth 20 points. And I think I gave everyone 20 points, except for, I gave a couple 18 and 19 points if I thought I saw something was a little weak. And again, as I've told you 100 times, if you want to improve on that, if that matters that much to you, feel free to give me a call, and I'll tell you what I think you need to do to pop it from an 18 to a 20 or a 19 to 20. I don't think anybody less than 18. And as you realize that there's I think 40 points, 30 points of 30 points of discussion, and you grade it on 2 counts. I haven't put those things. They're all threes, assuming that you get on every week and that you exchange with other people every week. Not everybody, I don't think, exchanges with everybody every week. Some of you are spectacular at that, and you know who you are, and I applaud you for it. But I think sometimes people don't particularly get into the discussion part or as much as I would like. But that's neither here nor there. So that's 30 points. This particular assignment was 40 points. I'm forgetting that which is 40 and which is 30. That's 30 points. Discussion is 30. The what do you call it? This paper I just graded the midterm. I think it's 20. It was 20 points, and the applications paper will be 50 points. I reserve the right to look at them more carefully. I just don't feel like looking at my syllabus now, and you may have the idea that I don't get too hung up on these things, as I just don't get hung up on these things. It's a graduate class in an MBA. I applaud those. All of you want great grades, and I want to give you great grades. And I'm not going to be so rigidly, inflexibly associated with those numbers. I just refuse to do that. So not to worry. Don't worry. If you're doing the work and it's above satisfactory, then the grade will be above satisfactory without any thinking hard about it. So yes, I've read the midterms. I enjoyed reading them. He smiled. Some good thinking in there. and some pretty strong thinking too. About, you took different pieces of. One of you mentioned in the discussions that you wish you could see the other folks' assignments, and I hesitate to do that. Because everybody's assignment is their own assignment. So I haven't done that, but over the next week or two, I'll probably allude to a lot of the things that you pointed out. So they're coming. There's a discussion question. All the discussion questions, again, have been read up through about a half hour ago. And so those are all in good shape. New discussion question is kind of a little bit funky, a little bit tricky to explain. So what I'm going to do is share the screen and show you some things that you need to be aware of. Not funky as in hard, but just funky as in just finding it. So what I'm going to do is bring up the PowerPoint from last week, which I didn't post. I included it in the video, but I did post a few minutes ago. So now it's in the document section, and I will find it for you. And there it is. I'm going to share it. I'm not going to read this whole thing all back to you. I just want to go really to one slide. Here we go. I did say, I think I said it to Evan or somebody else too. How I wish I had the second course with you folks in the spring. How I wish it. How I wish the course would allow us to co-create some sort of technologically based training program. Would that be good, or would that be good? But unfortunately, the course is not offered, nor am I scheduled to have you again. So just a wish I had to really bring this whole course to a new level. And there it is, design a training program. That's my wish. Design it. Does that sound nerdy? But I guess it is my wish. Design a training program for Company X that incorporates any two of the following technological components. And then we're going to just zip through some of that. But I want to get to slide 9. Now, slide 9 is a little tricky for you. I mentioned it last week. I want to re-mention it, and then we're probably going to address it again in tomorrow's video, I think, as well. That's a futures wheel. And I did talk a little bit about this yesterday. A futures wheel is a graphic organizer where you use it to project different expectations of the trainer. This is a futures wheel is as akin to throwing. I may have said this last week. I have one of my golf balls. This golf ball was from my own one and only hole in one. All right. So if I toss this, and I would never do this, I would keep this to my dying day. If I toss this in this hole-in-one golf ball into a pond, you know what would happen. First of all, it would sink to the bottom, and I would never get it back, and I would not be happy. But the other part of it would be that we would get ripples, and the ripples would go all the way out to the edge of the pond in different concentric waves, as you can imagine, as you have probably done many times, especially if you have children or when you were a child. So what that golf ball represents is, in this case, a future. So this center is the golf ball. It's a future. I'm calling it a probable future. And you did react to some of this in your discussion questions responses this week. And I'm saying that web-based approaches to training will increase. That's a future I think we're seeing happen every day. The pandemic certainly accelerated it, and it's going to continue whether we like it or not. All right, whether you think it's a preferred future or not, it is a probable future. By the way, there is a difference between probable and preferred, which we'll get to in a moment. So what I did was I took it upon myself to project 4 probable futures. I could have projected any number of other ones. These are just the 4 that I thought of. Going in no particular order. Well, if we're going to increase, if you're expected to put together a web-based training program, you really need to take the time to assess the readiness of the trainees. Do they know how to use the web-based things? Will it throw them? Will it scare them? Will it be beneath them? So technologically competent. All right, so that's one probable future. Another one is, if you know you want to do this, you probably may need to think about considering putting in some kind of blended variation, at least in the beginning, so that you can retain some human element. Some of you deny the idea of a human element altogether, got a kick out of that. And others of you, and you know who you are, others of you saw the need to do that in some of your conversations, your discussion questions. Another probable future is, if you're going to do this, you need to really analyze it for alignment to make sure that your goals are lined up properly, and the technology goals, the web-based software kinds of goals that you need to engage your trainees with, will need to be aligned properly, so you just don't go shooting at dragons without having any purpose for doing it, except to shoot at dragons. I deliberately put this other one in because one or two of you have mentioned this to me. I had some students in my last class when I taught this too, who were really emphatic about it, that when you go to put in a web-based approach for training, it's possible or probable in certain cases that the collective bargaining, the collective bargaining agreement, the union agreement might have to be renegotiated. Believe it or not, we know that those of you who work with unions know that in one form or another, and having been on both sides of the street as a union officer in my day, and as an administrator who had as a boss who had to deal with some of those things, you have to factor that in. How would you go about doing that? Now, again, follow my cursor here. These are probable futures that resulted from the golf ball of web-based approaches to training would be expected to increase across our collective futures. Now, the next question comes with this easily enough. I couldn't draw the arrows on the PowerPoint, but let's just follow one. Let's just follow. Consider web-based variation. Well, what's another future that extends from the blended variation? What would you need to do? What future does that anticipate? What probable future that you would consider? Extend that out. Follow that thread out a bit more. And you can see what we're doing is trying to identify the impacts or the consequences of the ripple across the pond. So the discussion question that you have is in your syllabus on Blackboard, and it's also in the, I didn't kill that. No, I didn't. And also in the content I added tonight. I'm just going to bring this up for a second and read it back to you. Okay, and it's in the syllabus too. So you can see that I put the entire PowerPoint from last week in there, but I'm really pointing out slide 9. And slide 9 says, as mentioned last week, this is a futures wheel, a simple graphic device intended to have you project probable futures and additional probable futures that emerge from the first ones. The center future, that's the golf ball, projects a probable one that states that web-based training approaches will increase. The wheel then projects new probables. There will be a need to assess readiness. Another one might be you have to consider introducing a blended model. The collective bargaining agreement might have to be renegotiated. Another projects that the new system will require considerable alignment and training. Now, here's what you need to do. Here's the task. Choose one of these outcomes, not all 4. Project additional futures that will extend from those already noted. So give me the consequence of the consequence, then a consequence of the consequence as you imagine it may evolve. Just identify some of those projected outcomes, and then I need you to do, this is the important piece, decide if this probable future is a preferred one for your own planning purposes as we move towards your application paper, which we're going to talk about in a moment. So that's the discussion question. You'll see that there's chapter 8 PowerPoint is in this document section. I think they call content. I always forget what they call it. And then slide 9 is the one I'm referring to. There's the question. The same question is in the syllabus on the week of October 23rd. And that's what you have to do. So that's the point you need to work with. The other piece too, I wanted to talk about, and we just took care of that. By the way, we'll be going into that more into futures forecasting more deeply as we move to the next chapter, into chapter 9, and probably for the rest of the text as we move towards the back part of the course. We also noted last week, and I made a specific point out of doing this last Monday, not last weekend, but last Monday in the office hours. I posted up some points, and I put up the document about it, kind of a raw document. They advise you how to go about thinking about how you're going to write the applications question, the final exam, if you want to call it that, which is either worth 40 points or 50 points. I don't remember. Not to worry. And so I think the biggest point I made there, I emphasized them in different ways, was I need to know the context. If you're creating a training program for the Walt Disney World, that's different from creating a training program for your dental office or for your charitable organization or for a company that you would like to start of your own. So I need to understand the context, because to understand the context will enable you to chart your plans for a training program with the needs assessment and everything that goes with it, and it helps me understand what you're trying to do. If I recall correctly, in that video, I also, and I urge you to watch it if you haven't, I also included a very, very I'm going to say superficial is probably not the right word. But I guess it is superficial, quite frankly. Sort of a common textbook variety strategic planning template that you can find most anywhere. If you Google strategic planning template, you're going to get something that looks like what I gave you there. And the reason why I gave it to you was because I was suggesting strongly that as you begin to work towards this, because it's, I guess, 3 weeks away to, what's today, the 23rd or 30th? It's almost about 2.5 weeks away for this to be due. So I suggested that you use that graphic to sort of get your act together and get your arms around all of the elements of it, what the training program might entail. Then I thought, well, maybe we need to look at this a little bit more carefully. And I dug around in my files and I found something I had used actually last semester. And what I did was I included that in the content pieces in Blackboard. And I'm not going to read all of it to you, but here it is. Now you can see this is pretty detailed. Again, there's the question, there's the assignment, develop a training plan for a specific group of people in a specific organization. And I give examples. And it actually makes things a little easier for you, because I don't necessarily want a wholesale D-Day planning, but rather something more finely tuned. And then what I wrote is 6 areas you need to address. Again, this goes back to what I talked about a few minutes ago. Write a few sentences about the organization. Okay. Give me context. Give me a description of who the training audience is going to be. Again, you're making this up. I don't want you to go into reality unless you have the reality at your fingertips. And you can see there's points allotted for A and B. How would you go about conducting a needs assessment? What would your specific learning objectives be? What training methods would you use? Which is really where we're really hammering pretty hard at you. Select at least 3, okay? And you're discussing 7 and 8. And you can see, I'm not going to read all this, so you can see how it's laid out. And then to describe how you will ensure this transfer of the training to your job. In other words, how you will know, that they'll be able to take it back into their work tasks. And then finally, how you're going to evaluate it. So, I mean, that's about as clean as I can get it for you to structure this for you. You have this in your documents and in your content on the Blackboard syllabus and in the whole package of learning management materials that you need. So you have everything here. So this way, there's no quarrel with that. Now, because um, my middle name is Frank, and my name for my father, but the F in Frank could also stand for flexible. Certainly, I can be flexible about this. If you would rather approach this from a different angle, or from something that truly motivates you to really get more deeply involved with this from a different dimension, well, for heaven's sakes, just let me know. Ask me, and I would say 99 times out of 100, I will say fine. As long as I hear those 6 things are in there someplace along the way, I'm happy. Okay. So that's my housekeeping issues for this video. Midterms are graded. You're going to see the grades tomorrow. I read all the discussion questions. I haven't put the numbers in there because they're always a 3 unless they're not. But I can't even think of why not giving everyone a 3, provided that you posted something up. If you didn't post it up, then you didn't get the 3. I mean, that's as simple as that. There's a new discussion question starting from tonight, which I just explained to you pretty clearly. That's geared back to the PowerPoint. It's more specifically slide 9. And it's a futuring premise, which we're going to get into a bit more in a moment, but over the next couple of weeks. And then I gave you a template to work from insofar as your applications question is concerned, which is due, I believe, I want to say around November 10th. As I said last week, I don't like to dilly-dally on those because I like to get my grades in on time. I have a lot of students and a lot of courses, and I don't want to have to stand around twiddling my thumbs waiting for somebody to hand me things. I'll just give you an incomplete, and that's a total pain in the neck to fix that. We don't want to do that. Now, tomorrow I'm going to get into chapter 9. Chapter 9 is more vanilla in my mind than the chapter 7 and 8. Chapter 7 and 8, in many respects, were the engine of this whole course. But chapter 9 begins to give us some other things to consider about the evolution of where these things are going. Sometimes I wish I were in human resource management in a corporation myself right now, because to me it's kind of exciting. There's a lot of things you can do, presuming you're in a culture of an organization that understands the need to get new and get real with these things. How much fun is this going to be for you folks to be out in the front of some of these things? Would that I can assure myself that I could get you a million miles out in front of everyone, but I can't do that in an 8-week course. But I think we've sowed enough acorns along the way for you to nurture those oak trees if you take the time to do it. And I'll be certainly glad to talk to you about this after this course is finished. Any number of ways. Just ask me. I'll be happy to talk to you. So this next chapter will talk about the nature of technology and how it's revolutionizing what we're trying to do. And we go back to that futures word again. I think you all know I've written a book for some things about futuring from a couple of different perspectives. And I'm fascinated by futuring and deciding. And I think I've said it a few times. And futuring is the idea of future all by itself, of your own personal future, or the government's future, the country's future, your family's future, your grandson's future, is just boggling to me, just boggling. And yet, where there are people who say, well, we can't necessarily forecast the future. And I say poppycock to that. Nonsense. You can forecast the future. You can forecast the future of the corporation that you might work for. You can forecast the future of your family. I know it's kind of sometimes a little harsh to say, but you can forecast those things. You can figure out probabilities. You can't figure out necessarily specifics, but you can forecast probabilities and narrow probabilities. When the card player goes to the poker table or to the blackjack table in a casino, she's trying to calculate the probabilities of which cards are going to come up. And we know that there's some yes spots involved with that, but and those who can figure out which cards have been used will know that which cards are probably going to come up. If I'm on first base and I'm as slow as molasses, which is true now, but wasn't always true, I used to be pretty fast, and you want to steal second, you better be able to know the probability of the accuracy of the catcher's arm and the strength of his arm to get the ball to second base before you. If the probability is it's going to beat you there, you don't run. I mean, I can think of a million different examples of that as we get along. So I'm just going to roll some ideas at you I may have said to you before in the era when it comes to the future, insofar as how you plan your training processes for your mythical company. You need to mythically consider the 3 Ps, which is, again, what's possible, what's probable, and what's preferable. Where preferable sounds to be like the one that everyone wants to get their teeth into. Quite frankly, it's the probable one that's got the most power, because the preferables come from them. The preferables come from the probables. They don't come just out of left field. If they're part of that bundle of probables, and what you need to do is to narrow them down, to forecast down, not predict. Predict is too specific. What you want to do is forecast. This is a more general term. Sort of like a weatherman who says there's a 30% chance of rain tomorrow, kinds of things. And so that's where we're going with some of this. And I want to speak more specifically about simulation, which again goes back to chapter 8, quite frankly, because I want to make sure that everyone gets their arms around that, because a lot of you express interest in simulations and role playing as viable training strategies. And I know I'm looking at myself on the screen, and I'm embarrassed for bragging, but I'm very well versed in simulation design for training. So I'm done it a million times, and I like to do it. I love to do it. There was a time when I thought simulations was the only way you could train a workforce. I no longer believe that. It's kind of silly if you think about it, but I do see it as a very viable, powerful approach. Provided you know how to design it, and you know how to create the capacity of your stakeholders to have that happen. So we're going to do a little bit more of that. So there's a lot to happen in this chapter 9, which I'll be talking more specifically about tomorrow. So if I'm not mistaken, the Yankees game is still in a delay. I'm not sure I want to watch it anyway, because it's been so painful to be part of the past couple of days. But I'm going to watch it anyway, in one form or another. So all of these things we spoke about today are housekeeping issues and preparation for you to finish this course successfully. You've been great. You really have been just terrific. You might have been one of the, I don't want to, this sounds like so corny when you talk to adults, but one of the best groups I've ever dealt with, ever. That's how sharp you are. I wish I had you in front of me in a classroom. We could do some really spectacular things. But we'll keep plowing along. And with that, I will say good night.